Hello folks, my name is Gerard. We're here with the Amerykański Life. Today, we're going to be making some head cheese. In Polish, that's known as Salceson. Salceson is made with kind of some cutoffs and some leftovers from any kind of meat processing that you do. A lot of folks use the head of a pork, and that is why it's called head cheese actually. So what we're using is, like for example here we have some tongs. We've got some cheek meat and a few different cuts. We're also going to be using, for example, some pig heart, which is that right there. We're going to be using some ribs, some of the cutoffs from the rib. Let's see, what do we got here? That looks like a shoulder or rump joint, probably shoulder. So just kind of some of the cutoffs that you're not going to be using from a pig if you do happen to butcher pig, which we just did. And that's why we have all this wonderful meat. All right, folks, so we're going to be using about 3 medium or 2 very large carrots. That's about 400 grams of carrot. We've got 2 large onions. You can use 3 medium size. It's going to be about 600 grams of onion. We have 3 heads of garlic. That is about 80 grams of garlic. You're going to want to cut them in half like we have here. We have about 2 and a bit cups of parsley, which comes out to about 300 grams. We have about 3/4 of a cup of marjoram, which is very light. Depending on how yours is chopped, it might be come out to be a little bit different, but it is about 20 grams of marjoram. We have about 1.5 tablespoons of black peppercorn, which is about 20 grams. We have about 1.5 tablespoons of white peppercorn, which is about 20 grams. Then we have our caraway seeds, which is about 2 tablespoons or 10 grams. We have our nutmeg, which is about 2 3/4 tablespoons or 20 grams. About 10 bay leaves. And we have our 2.5 tablespoons or about 40 grams of salt. Looks like that might be a little bit more. Let's see. That's showing to be closer to 8.5 or 9 tablespoons. Ooh. Oh wait, those are teaspoons. 3 tablespoons. So I was spot on. All right. And then our gelatin for a little bit later. And we have about 1 1/3 tablespoons of gelatin, which is about 20 grams of gelatin. And we will most definitely be listing all of the ingredients, the seasonings, quantities, brief description of what kind of meats are being used in the description underneath this video. All right, to start, we're going to be taking our bony chunks, like if there's any good exposed bone, and you're going to take those, and you're going to place those at the bottom of the pan. So there's some nice bones. We're just lining the pan with anything that's got bones in it, all across the bottom. That's a bone, isn't it? Feels like it. All right, that's tongue. There's no bone there. I think that is about it for bony chunks. All right, so we spread them out a little bit. And then we're going to take our meat and kind of pack it all in there. And you're going to really want to push down a little bit harder on these guys. Here, let's slide this over, do it like that so it's a little more central. All right. You're taking this, pushing it in there, making sure to fill some gaps. See, there we've got some nice skin. Now, if you happen to have, which we don't, some pork that has skin still attached, you're going to want to use that. Of course, you have to make sure the skin is cleaned and the hair has been removed, but it's really good to use a little bit of skin in there because that'll break down, soften, and give your head cheese a little bit of texture. Sadly, we don't have any, but let's see. Ooh, found a little bony piece, huh? Yeah, slide that a little lower because I know we're lacking some bone. Then we have another tongue. Now with the tongue, after we're done boiling this, we will be taking those tongues out and removing the skin from the tongue. If you try to remove it beforehand, it's a little difficult. But as you can see, there's that upper layer right up there. That has to be removed. But we'll get to that later. All right, there's the heart. Another heart, that is. And as I said, you're basically just using any cutoffs, any spare bits that you have, anything that's left over from pork can be thrown right into here. Now, this is going to get covered with about 3.5 inches of water above the meat. By the time you're done boiling, it's probably going to be closer to 2 inches of water. You're going to want to start this out and get it boiling, and then slow the boil down, just so you have a few little bubbles going along. And then it's going to have to boil for a good amount of time. Again, until you go down from about 3 inches to about 2 inches. And we're going to want to boil this for about 2.5 hours. We're also going to be using a natural fiber casing. It's not made from intestines, but it is made from, I believe, some sort of wood pulp. It's a 4-inch casing, and that's what we're going to be packing our head cheese into. Before you start adding seasonings and stuff, it's probably a good idea to let this sit, not probably a good idea, you absolutely have to, let this sit in warm water for about half an hour, at least half an hour I would say. You can let it sit in there for a good bit longer before you start packing it. And I believe we're ready to start boiling some. Or I should say, we're about ready to start adding some seasonings. Okay, so we have all of our meats. They have been added. We have added some water. The meat will rise up a little bit, but once you push it down, make sure you have about 3 inches of water above your meat, at least 3 inches. All right, let's start adding some vegetables and some seasonings. So we're going to start with our marjoram. Again, about a cup, a little bit less. We're going to do our white peppercorns, our black peppercorns, our nutmeg, our caraway seeds, our bay leaves, and the salt. All right, now we're going to move on to our garlic. Now the garlic is whole and with the skin. We can move on to our parsley. And our onions. And finally, we're going to add our carrots. All right, and again, as far as our beef gelatin, or our gelatin goes, I believe this is pork gelatin, we're gonna save that for later after this is done boiling. All right, we'll see you soon. And our head cheese stew has been on the oven now for about 2 hours. We are ready to take the meat out and cut up some of the meat. We're gonna be cubing it. We're separating everything else out, and then we're going to strain the remainder of the juices from the parsley and the onion, the garlic, the carrot that's in there, just so we're going to be left with the liquid, which then we're going to be mixing in a little bit of gelatin just so it will turn into a gel or jello. Yeah, let's get started. Wow, it really is just falling apart in there. That is beautifully tender. Nice fatty chunks. Here we have a nice thick chunk of heart. We're going to try to keep as many of the chunks of carrot, parsley back in there. have some tongue. We'll slide that over to the side because we still do need to peel the skin off of the tongue. It's going to require a little bit more processing than the rest of what we're doing here. Got our bonier chunks. And get some of the meat off of those. There we got the other tongue. All right, and it looks like we've gotten a good majority of the meat out. Let's see what else we can kind of pick through there and find. All right, folks, and it's time to strain. The straining process might take a good little bit because we do have a lot of chunks in there. There's a lot of chunky stuff, a lot of seasoning. Let's see if we can help this out a little bit. Now you don't want to press too hard against the strainer, as you might push through some of the marjoram or nutmeg. Oh, the nutmeg's probably pretty well dissolved. Then while we're in there, we can take a couple chunks of the meat, throw them in there if we find any bigger ones. All right.
All right, and onto the tongue. Now, with the tongue, the skin off the top of it isn't exactly edible. There's a layer of it that will need to be removed. To do that, you slice right across the top to give yourself some easier access to be able to peel off that upper layer. Although it is edible, again, not the best texture. It is a little tough, so we're going to be removing it. Now, we're using tongs here because the tongue is really hot. And be careful not to burn yourself. If you do have them, use thermal gloves. As you can see, it does peel off fairly easily. It comes off in decent sized chunks. Just a little bit at a time, and you should be able to get it without any issue. You can also use the knife, scrape off little bits that are a little bit more stubborn, and as you work, you'll see it is really a piece of cake.
That is, missed a little piece, but that is a processed piece of tongue. That's what you're going to want your tongue to look like right there. All right, let's get processing some meat. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting it into chunks about that big, which they're going to be about 1 inch by inch is what we're looking for. Give that a little slice down the middle again. All right, and onwards and upwards. Now we can add our meat back to this, since we're done with processing kind of the bony stuff. The rest can just get dissected by hand. Woo! Que calientito! Looks like we got a little more tongue there. Let's get some of that skin off again. That looks good. All right, so we've got all the liquid, the seasoned liquid that our meat was boiling in, which is mostly water with a whole bunch of fat that came out of the meats. And we just strained it, as you saw. Now let's give it a little taste test to see if it needs anything else. So as you can see, nice and seasoned, absolutely gorgeous in there. You can see that there's a ton of fat in there. Let's give that a little try. Ooh, yeah, that is beautifully seasoned. Heavily with marjoram, and it's coming through really nicely, not overpowering. Perfectly salty. The peppercorns did their thing. Yeah, we're good to go. All right, so now we've got a whole bunch of that stock left. But all we're gonna need is probably about 3 cups of it. So we'll take a little bit of that. There's about 1.5 cups. Not 2. 1 more for good measure. Should be about 3 cups in there right now. All right, now we're gonna add our beef gelatin, making sure to stir constantly and add it very slowly so it does not clump up. And we will not be adding all the beef gelatin we have here. Considering that we're just doing the 3 cups, we'll probably only add about half of this. Making sure to stir the whole time. All right, and that's about half. Make sure that gets stirred up plenty. All right, and as you can see, it's changed color a little bit. Looks good. All right, and now let's get this poured over this. Let's give this a little mix. Looks like we're gonna need a little bit more of this stuff right here. So let's just add another couple. All right, and it looks like we're good to case.
If you happen to have a funnel, be sure to use it. It makes the process a lot easier. You'll be able to ladle more into the casing and it'll go by just a little bit quicker. If you don't happen to have a funnel, it's all right. Just use a smaller ladle and ladle directly into the casing. While you're filling your casing, be sure to give it a few little love taps to help spread everything out inside and compact it a little bit. We'll be doing more of that once we fill the casing up more.
As you reach the end, you're going to want to add a little bit more of that liquid, just so all those meaty chunks get suspended in a nice gelatinous blob, let's call it. All right. Now we take some string. And just as last time, we're going around and through. And then we take one end, make a loop. Then we take the other end, make a loop in the other direction. Oh, didn't work. Try that one more time. And we pull it nice and tight. And let's give it a little tie at the end. Just a simple knot. And that's it. We've got ourselves a nice healthy Salceson, aka a head cheese. Now what this is going to do is this is going to stay in the fridge for 24 hours-ish. And after that, it's going to solidify in there, much like a Jell-O would. Then you'll have your head cheese. And I'll see you then. As soon as we get this thing done out of the fridge, I'll show you exactly what it looks like. All right, folks, and we're back on day 2. Our head cheese is finished. Let's take a look at this guy. Pop it up to this camera. Quite nice, huh? Look at all that, nice meatiness. See the gelatinous bit of it has done its job. I'm sort of, I don't want to call it Jell-O. It's not Jell-O. It's the same thing as Jell-O, just without sugar, but it just feels wrong. All right, let's take a look at this thing on the inside. All right, let's see. Let's cut it this way, so show it to camera. Make sure it's in frame, in frame. Actually, we'll do it in frame for this one up here. There we have our head cheese. All right, take a look at this guy. Man, that is a dense head cheese. So the head cheese that I'm used to getting at the store, for example, is a lot more similar to, no, I guess I wouldn't say more similar. There's a lot more jelly. You can actually see, like, even if you Google head cheese, you'll see that there's huge patches of clear stuff, the gelatin. This one, a lot more meat. All right, make sure to take the casing off. It is not edible. It's non-toxic. You could eat it. Don't eat it. All right, cut off a little sliver. There we go. Beautifully seasoned. Since we made the gelatin with the stock, it has all the flavor of it. It is very fatty. Now eating it like this, raw, perfectly fine. Definitely better on a little bit of bread. Don't fry it up, don't cook it. Not meant to be cooked. It is already cooked. If you cook it, it's just gonna fall apart. Imagine cooking a Jell-O you made, a nice sweet one. It just turned back to liquid. Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed making head cheese with us. Again, Salceson in Polish. Thank you very much for watching The Amerykański Life. Again, my name is Gerard. We're going to have a full breakdown of ingredients and process in the description. Thanks. Hope to see you soon.